There's really no plausible medical reason why I should still be alive. Maybe my DNA could say why. Ozzy Osbourne is a fascinating example since he has endured an astounding quantity of alcohol-related abuse. The world was shocked when Ozzy Osbourne passed away at age 76. It wasn't because it happened suddenly, but rather because everyone quietly questioned how he got so far in the first place. His survival seemed like a medical enigma wrapped in eyeliner and leather for decades. Looking back, his crazy lifestyle isn't the true twist. Perhaps his biological peculiarities and ancestry kept him alive long after reason told him he shouldn't have. The DNA of a warrior. Despite leading a fast-paced, boisterous, and eccentric life, Ozzy Osbourne managed to live to be 76. Indeed, the Prince of Darkness passed away on July 22, 2025, with the causes listed on his death certificate as acute myocardial infarction, coronary artery disease, Parkinson's disease, and cardiac arrest. But let's take a moment to recognize the irony. He lived into his mid-70s as if he were trying out for the part of human demolition derby. How? This is where things get crazy, so grab a beer. Let's start by discussing DNA. You may believe that Ozzy's survival was due to heavy metal wizardry, a miracle, or just plain chance. However, his body was most likely wired differently from the beginning. It has long been hypothesized by researchers that his DNA enabled him to metabolize drugs, alcohol, and poisons in ways that other people could never. Every night of his existence, Ozzy's nervous system and liver were essentially doing a sort of extreme triage, keeping him alive while the rest of us would have long since passed away. It's physiologically stubborn, but not invincible. The ancestry angle is another. This is not a gimmick for celebrity ancestry tests. Ozzy was descended from a long line of Birmingham laborers, machinists, and manufacturing workers. His grandparents were genuinely exhausted from their labors. There are hints of Norse ancestry, possibly even Viking DNA, if you look at the deeper branches, so perhaps Ozzy's survival was due to more than simply his attitude. His cells had the code for thousands of years of survival, rough life, rough genes, and tough forebears. A formula for someone who could ignore things that most people can't. His way of life didn't help, of course. Look no further if you've ever questioned how someone manages to endure decades of heavy drug usage, binge drinking, sleep deprivation, stage antics, and downright mishaps. Ozzy wasn't merely taking chances. The human tolerance chart was being redefined by him. He was mauled by a bat, fell from stages, and crashed ATVs. Yes, that did occur and continued. The answer to the question, how is Ozzy still alive, may have as much to do with his peculiar biology as it does with his obstinate reluctance to pass go peacefully. Ozzy didn't slow down much, even in the past 10 years when his body began to give him more serious signs. His determination was hardly weakened by Parkinson's illness, spinal injuries, and chronic pain, all conditions that would crush most people. In July 2025, a few weeks before his death, he even gave a final performance with Black Sabbath. Consider that. Someone with Parkinson's disease, heart problems, nerve damage, and decades of substance addiction nonetheless taking the stage for one more wild performance. This is statistically ludicrous. The real kicker is this. It wasn't magic, temperance and lifestyle, or good fortune that kept Ozzy alive. It was a confluence of human will, stubbornness, ancestry, and DNA. His body was able to endure extremes that most people would never survive because of his DNA, heritage, upbringing, and unwavering determination. For many years, he could as well have been immortal, even though he wasn't. Indeed, Ozzy died at the age of 76, but in retrospect, his life seems more like a physics-defying experiment than a memoir. A man who had the courage to continue performing to the very end despite drinking, smoking, falling, getting hurt, and surviving illness. His DNA, his heritage, and his lifestyle made him a living legend for far longer than anyone could have predicted, even though his body may have ultimately called it quits. For decades, Ozzy Osbourne defied the odds rather than merely surviving. Perhaps is his lasting legacy. The tale of a guy whose physique, heritage, and unwavering will made him nearly invincible, almost legendary, and utterly unforgettable. not the music, the bats, or the antics. Even though the Prince of Darkness is no longer with us, the science, the DNA, and the tale of his survival will continue to be discussed for centuries to come by both scientists and fans. And his energy is the reason behind that. From enduring personal turmoil to not only was Ozzy's endurance famous, but it was also unstoppable, commanding large crowds. The endurance of Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne's stamina is the first thing that people notice about her. And no, I'm not referring to marathons or exercise. He had the kind of intensity that made him famous, the kind that allowed him to return for more after decades of chaos. The man was more than a performer. He created a presentation that resembled a rock and roll cyclone by blowing up every stage he walked on. Ozzy was a living force of mayhem throughout his Black Sabbath days, solo career, and even reality TV due to his vivacity, unpredictable nature, and audience connection. And he managed to keep it going for more than 50 years. Early in the 1970s, Black Sabbath performances were more than just concerts. They were endurance tests. With a voice that seemed to come from another planet, Ozzy would command the stage as soon as she stepped onto it in Birmingham or New York, screaming, weeping, captivating. Fans did more than just observe. They participated in it. And the man was able to maintain that vigor city after city, night after night. How? It was partly adrenaline. Hereditary factors played a role. We've discussed his obstinate DNA, which enables him to digest toxins in ways that most mortals cannot. Mostly though, it was Ozzy, unfiltered, chaotic, and totally focused on the show. The man was still able to reach those high notes and command crowds the way he did at the age of 25, despite decades of partying, drug use, binges, and extensive traveling. You can't teach that strength. His solo career comes next. Most people would have anticipated burnout by the time he went solo in the late 1970s. Not Ozzy. He put out albums that were smash after hit. With every release came tours that were difficult to organize, let alone endure. Nevertheless, he was traveling the world and doing lengthy concerts while frequently wearing costumes that would cause others to perspire, smoke, or trip. Fans remembered how captivating Ozzy's presence was, even at smaller places. He gave each performance a personal vibe, as if he were performing exclusively for you. The adolescent in the pit, the seasoned fan in the front row, and the guy with the bleeding nose. He never seemed to be practicing his energy. It was untidy, lively, and chaotic. Maybe that's why his performances are still discussed decades later. He did more than just perform. He threw himself into it. Ozzy's relationship with fans is another. He did more than simply sign autographs and wave. He interacted with them in a manner that most celebrities do not. He fostered a bond that made it difficult to distinguish between friend and star, whether it was through memorable interviews, strange stunts, or just expressing gratitude for their devotion. Fans were aware that the unexpected was possible. A stage stunt, a joke, or an honest outburst. That dynamic was brought to living rooms all over the world via his reality show, The Osbournes, which revealed an unguarded, occasionally ridiculous, and always human side of Ozzy. People felt as though they knew him. In addition to admiring him, it is uncommon to have that kind of emotional, social, and performative endurance. His ability to be both surprising and personable allowed him to not only survive but dominate the market. His appeal, of course, also meant that he was able to work with bandmates amid turbulence that few would face. Black Sabbath's early years were tumultuous. Conflicts between lifestyles, creative differences, and fights. Ozzy may exhibit erratic, explosive, and occasionally irritating behavior. However, his bandmates Bill Ward, Geezer Butler, and Tony Iommi saw that something amazing lay beneath the chaos. Rehearsals couldn't bring a song to life the way Ozzy's energy did. He would try new things on stage, improvise lyrics, or engage in physical stunts that challenged the band and himself. The music produced by that chaotic yet magnificent synergy transformed the world and made Black Sabbath famous. The enchantment of Ozzy's energy kept the machine going even when disputes erupted or tempers boiled. Although he wasn't always a pleasure to work with, the outcomes were undeniable. His presence changed over the decades. It's difficult to tour when you're 50 or 60. Nevertheless, Ozzy continued to perform. Fans in their 20s or 30s would question how a man who was decades older could still perform well, engage with audiences, and retain the magnetism that made him a living legend. Willpower is a contributing factor. Despite the commotion, Ozzy adapted to a life that required energy night after night, so part of it is routine. Naturally, genetics has a role. He was able to survive traumas, endure long-term stress, and metabolize pollutants thanks to his particularly resilient biochemistry. It turned him become a rock music endurance athlete as much as a performer. He had more than just physical vigor, it was social, emotional, and neurological. He was able to endure decades of notoriety, addiction, and the unavoidable health issues that accompany an edge-living lifestyle because of it. The narrative of his endurance becomes even more amazing in his latter years. He now had to deal with illnesses like Parkinson's disease, spine injuries, and coronary artery disease on a regular basis. However, in July 2025, only a few weeks before he passed away from cardiac arrest, he gave Black Sabbath one last goodbye performance. Consider that. Despite decades of pharmaceutical misuse, chronic agony, and degenerative disease, this man continues to perform the music that made him famous. That is a level of endurance that is almost legendary. Fans applauded not only for the music but also for the fact that Ozzy had persevered through so many hardships, exceeded so many expectations, and still had the stamina to perform. There is a genesis to every legend. For Ozzy, the original band consisted of 4 lads from Birmingham. Black Sabbath is a must if you want to discuss the history of heavy metal. And at the center of that tale is Ozzy Osbourne, the untamed, erratic lead singer who came to represent gloom, revolt, and dread. The story of Black Sabbath's voyage with Ozzy is one of ingenuity, mayhem, and a chemistry so explosive that it almost destroyed the music business. In the late 1960s, it all started in Birmingham. Before anyone knew it, the band's sound was influenced by this gloomy industrial metropolis. The post-war austerity, the manufacturing smoke, and the 2 streets, awful. It all permeated the music of John Ozzy Osbourne, Bill Ward, Geezer Butler, and Tony Iommi. Heavy metal wasn't created in a tidy studio. It was forged in the furnace of their surroundings. And the yelling human representation of that roughness was Ozzy's voice. Something clicked the moment Ozzy joined the band in 1968. Butler's dark bass lines, Ward's precise drumming, and Iommi's chugging riffs combined to create a foundation that was hypnotic and savage. However, the music's soul came from Ozzy's unvarnished, passionate voice. He was not a trained vocalist. He lacked polish. He was strange, fragile, human, and in some terrible way ideal for the sound they were creating. Songs that spoke to the anxieties and alienation of a generation, such as Black Sabbath, Nib, and Paranoid, became anthems of uneasiness, and Ozzy had a crazy, perhaps erratic but always compelling delivery. Fans loved that he was channeling something darker and more primal than just singing. Don't get it wrong though, it wasn't an easy path to stardom. A whirlwind of personalities made up Black Sabbath. Every member contributes their unique quirks and inner demons. Ozzy was notoriously erratic and prone to actions that might be anything from deadly to ridiculously funny. However, the band's identity was shaped by such volatility. In addition to the music, Ozzy's energy and mayhem on stage, his flailing arms, his shouts, his unpredictable confrontations with spectators, and occasionally his use of a bat for shock value made her live performances legendary. It was a combination of music, horror, and drama that enthralled viewers everywhere. Black Sabbath and Ozzy were on constant tour throughout the early 1970s. Their status as heavy metal pioneers was cemented by albums such as Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and Master of Reality Volume 4. The road was cruel though. The band's stamina was put to the strain by long tours, drug and alcohol abuse, and ongoing interpersonal conflict. Ozzy managed to continue providing, not only surviving but also propelling the organization ahead, in spite of all the chaos he represented. His genuineness and willingness to be both strange and human at the same time won him admirers. The chemistry of the band depended heavily on his voice, stage presence, and unpredictable nature. Black Sabbath might have been just another hard rock band if it weren't for Ozzy. They became a cultural phenomenon along with him, but there was a cost to fame. By the late 1970s, Ozzy's increasing substance usage and internal band tensions had caused irreversible fissures. Arguments, missed cues, and disorderly conduct were common during recording sessions. The use of his drug was legendary. He has reportedly arrived late to sessions, seemed drunk, or even fainted during a performance. Nevertheless, the music persisted in some way. Despite instability, albums like Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die managed to capture genius. The raw energy was transmitted into the songs, giving them a feeling of unpredictability and intensity that polished pop music could never match, even though fans may not have fully understood the degree of the chaos behind the scenes. Finally, the inevitable occurred in 1979. Depending on who you ask, Ozzy either quit or was dismissed. His departure solidified his legend while also signaling the end of an era. His voice, his vigor, and his crazy demeanor were inextricably linked to the original Black Sabbath sound. Nothing could completely replace the weird alchemy that had existed with Ozzy, but life went on for the other band members with new vocalists. Ozzy saw it as an opportunity to go it alone, take charge of his profession, and explore the chaos he had always harbored. But there was no denying his connection to Black Sabbath. The trip that began in the dark streets of Birmingham would come full circle when he and the band reunited for concerts decades later. There is more to Black Sabbath's history with Ozzy Osbourne than meets the eye. It's a case study about survival, chaos, and chemistry. Yes, the music was innovative, but what really made the band iconic was the human element. Ozzy's voice, intensity, and erratic appearance. Fans did more than simply listen. They went on a ride with a man who appeared to exist on the brink of both art and destruction. Every cry, scream, and wild theatrical motion demonstrated his presence, vitality, and unwavering dedication to producing something truly remarkable. Leaving the band was only the start. Ozzy was going to create the Ozzy effect, which would redefine heavy metal according to his own standards. Most singers may have settled into happy middle life or sunk into oblivion after departing Black Sabbath. Not Osbourne. Ozzy, the man who had made it through tumultuous tours, infamous drug usage, and theatrical mishaps, wasn't going to relax. Rather, he embraced the chaos, transformed it into art, and built a brilliant career that may have defined modern heavy metal in its own way. Blizzard of Oz. His debut solo album was more than just an album. It was a declaration. Ozzy Osbourne was capable of existing outside of Black Sabbath with flair, eccentricity, and, above all, excellent performance. The persona, not simply the music, was what made the Ozzy effect so amazing. He developed an entirely erratic public persona from the beginning. He was singing songs like Wild Train, full of technical mastery and frantic energy, 1 minute. The next, he was making jokes on talk shows, playing practical jokes on the media, or getting into ridiculous situations that generated news. It was an entirely natural attitude to celebrity. He had no intention of being likable. He was attempting to be vibrant, unadulterated, and bigger than himself, and people reacted strangely. In actuality, millions of people watched his every erratic action, witnessing his equal parts destruction and creation. This effect is further demonstrated by his solo travels. Ozzy approached every performance as a high-stakes test of fun and spectacle, in contrast to many rock performers who become less active as they get older. He performed with the vigor of someone half his age, night after night, stadium after arena. Despite decades of abuse, his body continued to function due to a combination of adrenaline, instinct, and whatever unique genetic trait kept it functioning. Ozzy seemed to thrive off the audience, according to many fan comments. They would repay him tenfold if he fed them mayhem. The intensity was indisputable, even on bad nights when his voice broke or the sound wavered. It wasn't flawless, it was there. And for Ozzy, presence meant power. Not to be overlooked are the partnerships. Ozzy surrounded himself with musicians that could match his passion and push him further, in contrast to some solo acts who perform all by themselves. One of Ozzy's first solo collaborators, Randy Rhoads, enhanced his sound with precise yet wild guitar technique. Later, the shred-heavy wild energy that complemented Ozzy's frantic vocals was introduced by guitarists such as Zakk Wylde. These partnerships went beyond simple musical duos. They were controlled pandemonium drills, an ideal example of the Ozzy effect. Push everyone around you to the limit, but make a lasting impression in the process. His media profile was also affected by the Ozzy effect. In addition to garnering media attention, the Osbourne reality show established a new standard for celebrity culture. Fans were no longer only observing the rock star. The individual behind the persona was being observed by them. The spouse, the father, the weird metal uncle. Ozzy was personable, strangely real, and constantly interesting to watch as he went about his everyday life while occasionally losing it over his kids, the house, or random absurdities. It is not a physical presence, it's social and emotional. Few performers are ever able to maintain their genuineness while captivating millions of people in front of cameras. Ozzy kept using the Ozzy effect to remind people of his importance to heavy metal culture even in his later years. His ongoing importance was demonstrated by his collaborations with other artists, unexpected performances, and even public appearances at fan events. Ozzy continued to perform, tour, and engage with fans at a time when most rock performers are shutting down, demonstrating that influence has nothing to do with retiring. It all comes down to constancy, unpredictableness, and enduring charisma. His impact went beyond just music. Ozzy was more than just a performer thanks to merchandise, trademark guitars, themed products, and festival performances. Before memes ever existed, he became a living meme, a cultural touchstone, and a symbol. Black Sabbath's solo work, reality show, and the chaotic image he cultivated over decades introduced him to younger generations, many of whom had never seen the band perform live. Ozzy ended up serving as a kind of longevity lesson. Be resilient, accept your eccentricities, and never allow the public to define your importance. Ozzy kept performing despite his advanced age and health problems. Most individuals would have thought about taking a step back. Ozzy moved to the front. He never lost the drive that got him through decades of substance abuse, binges, stage antics, and mishaps. Rather, it changed. Even though his energy was measured, it remained magnetic. Despite being aware of his limitations, he chose not to let them define him. This was not conceit. It was an instinct for survival, developed over a lifetime of harsh situations. Only a few weeks before he passed away, in July 2025, when he gave his final goodbye performance with Black Sabbath, Ozzy had accomplished something that very few performers do. His career was genuinely unbroken in spirit. Over the course of more than 50 years, his solo recordings, live performances, media presence, and cultural influence produced an uninterrupted chain of impact. The Ozzy effect extended beyond survival. It was about living in a way that went against biology, the idea of aging gracefully, and common knowledge. Outside of the stage, Ozzy Osbourne was skilled at drawing attention with both music and spectacle. Let's talk about Ozzfest, a festival he co-founded in 1996 that has grown to be a yearly destination for metal fans all over the world. The concept was straightforward but brilliant. Establish a touring event that honored heavy metal in all its manifestations, with Ozzy serving as the festival's undeniable focal point. And it was successful. Fans were able to witness their idols alongside the Prince of Darkness himself, and bands that had previously been underground legends suddenly had enormous stages. Ozzfest was more than just a series of concerts. It revolved around Ozzy's character as a cultural phenomenon, a statement, and a mobile heavy metal shrine. At Ozzfest, Ozzy's function was never merely ceremonial. Although he was the festival's main act, he also engaged with attendees, presented new acts, and exuded a spirit that set the tone for the whole event. Fans would wait in line for hours in advance for a cause. Ozzy did more than just act. He was erratic, eccentric, and totally dedicated in his performance. He had a remarkable talent for personalizing every performance. Using a mix of instinct, adrenaline, and whatever enigmatic biology kept him going, he maintained that vitality even in front of tens of thousands of people and despite decades of wild living, aging, and health issues. It was like seeing anarchy turned into art when I saw Ozzy perform live at Ozzfest. Exciting, a little risky, and completely memorable. But Ozzy's dominance wasn't limited to Ozzfest. Unlike pure music, his media appearances contributed to the cementation of his legend outside of the metal world. Ozzy's charisma and unpredictable personality made him a star in everything from magazine appearances to late-night talk programs. It was stunning at moments, amusing at others, and profoundly human at others. Journalists and fans alike were never entirely sure what to anticipate. He might be thinking about life and survival at one point. The next, he might be telling a funny joke or pulling off an odd stunt that would make headlines. Its unpredictable nature became a hallmark, all Australian, half mystique, half marketing prowess. His media prominence was further enhanced by reality TV. By portraying Ozzy in a normal human setting and preserving his quirky character, the Osbournes turned the family into cultural idols. The contrast between the loving father and the crazy rocker was visible to viewers. The same man, now navigating daily life with humor and confusion, has endured decades of nearly unimaginable physical and lifestyle extremes. That show was more than just a show. It allowed Ozzy to connect with a whole new group of people, many of whom might not have ever heard of him through music. Ozzy appeared everywhere at once, around the world, on television, magazine covers, in interviews, and in homes. Ozzy persisted in making media appearances that bolstered his mystique despite his advanced age and health issues. He continued to perform interviews, guest appearances, and promotional work for his music, Ozzfest, and other endeavors far into his 70s. These were not merely perfunctory appearances, they were a continuation of his defiance. Despite having heart problems, chronic pain, and Parkinson's symptoms, he was able to captivate an audience, hold a room, and share his signature humor and wisdom. It's not only physical endurance at that level, it is performative, social, and emotional. The world saw that Ozzy's mind and body were still programmed to amuse. His media presence and Ozzfest were more than just a music festival. It has to do with influence. By using these venues, Ozzy exposed innumerable up-and-coming musicians, contributed to the development of metal culture, and reminded fans why he was still the undisputed Prince of Gloom. He reinforced a basic reality with each appearance. You may make a lasting impression even if you are erratic, eccentric, or even imperfect. He wasn't merely making ends meet as an artist. He was setting the norm for what it meant to survive in rock and metal, as well as the genre and culture. However, Osbourne's career encompasses more than only his musical and professional achievements. Additionally, it's a tale of controversy, mayhem, and incidents that caused tabloids to doubt reality itself. Call the opposite half of his image a combination of pure Ozzy, ill luck, and folklore. Controversies have been as much a part of his reputation as his voice or his riffs, ranging from startling on-stage stunts to astounding personal choices. Even though he has been dubbed the Prince of Darkness by many, his controversies actually show more about his humanity than his showmanship. First up is the notorious bat incident. It's just as crazy as it sounds. Yes, Ozzy chewed the head off a live bat that a fan had thrown on stage during a show in Des Moines, Iowa, in 1982. Newspapers became frantic. Animal rights organizations flourished. In equal parts, fans were appalled and enthralled. It is even more of a quintessential Australian moment because Ozzy later stated that he believed it to be a rubber bat. Unpredictable, erratic, and inadvertently legendary, his reputation as someone who defied moral and musical conventions was solidified by that one occurrence alone. A man prepared to astonish audiences for the purpose of performance, whether intentionally or inadvertently. The notorious rhinoceros incident comes next. Not as well known, but equally strange. Ozzy reportedly struggled with an escaped animal on set while recording a music video, leaving producers sweating and staff members astonished. These weren't only antics. They were natural products of a personality that flourished on uncertainty. Ozzy didn't seek out controversy. He was courted by controversy. His life of drug abuse, unpredictable conduct, and impulsive choices made headlines practically every day. Ozzy's problems extended beyond the stage. His career was dotted by legal troubles and run-ins with the law. Arrests for driving erratically, public intoxication, and minor altercations started to happen often. Add speculations from tabloids. A public perception that frequently exaggerates the facts results from everything from strange accusations about his personal life to crazy conjecture about his health and antics. Despite all the media attention, Ozzy persevered through every event with the same fortitude that got him through decades of emotionally and physically taxing performances. Occasionally, family disputes can come to surface, particularly in the early years of the Osbournes' reality show. Fans were given a close-up view of a man whose personal life was as unvarnished as his stage character as they saw Ozzy negotiate parenting, marriage, and marital turmoil. His contentious reputation was further enhanced by the fact that arguments, poignant moments, and embarrassing circumstances were televised globally. However, in contrast to some tabloid celebrities, these insights into Ozzy's life showed the muddy truth of a man balancing fame, family, and personal difficulties rather than malice or manipulation. Despite his advanced age, controversies persisted. They changed. Everyone was reminded that Ozzy didn't give a damn about politeness or PR fluff by her remarks in interviews, direct views about the music business, and sporadic public altercations with other musicians. He expressed his opinions, followed his desires, and accepted the repercussions. These disputes were, in a sense, a reflection of his uniqueness, an unwillingness to soften, conform, or be subdued by social standards. Have you heard any of his popular songs? Click subscribe to ensure you don't miss any rock legend stories. I also want to thank you for watching.